we're back live from the LinkedIn Hub at Advertising Week, and we are with Jim Butler. He's the president of Isobar US. Jim, you guys are a digital agency, a complete digital agency, and I know that your biggest focus is on the consumer experience. So, I mean, most people can kind of have an idea of what that is, but I want to hear from you more about how you guys really look at the consumer experience and putting it all together.
Great. Well, I mean, I think the way we like to describe the consumer experience is in the terms of narrative spaces. So we just spoke a little bit earlier today and talked about how brands are talking to their clients and their prospects down these different narrative spaces, but none of those spaces are necessarily connected to each other. So as we look at experiences, we look across all the different channels, and that narrative space will come together if there's somebody that can it could be the choreographer of those spaces and bring those together. And then if you look at, a good example would be, you walk into a retail store and you just spend a bunch of time online. And while they collected a bunch of data about you online, what your intent to buy was, what you wanted to buy, what colors you like and sizes, you walk into the retail store and none of that translates. So consumers are expecting better from brands, and we feel like there's a lot of opportunities and low-hanging fruit for brands to begin to connect those narrative spaces and create better customer experiences.
I mean, that sounds amazing in theory, but in practice, I mean, is there a lot of technology that goes into that? Is there still a lot of a big learning curve in terms of being able to do it? Or is there, communication issues of making sure that all these different narrative spaces communicate with each other?
So part of it is organizational silos.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a social group, there's a UX group, a commerce group, there's a retail group. So part of it is organizational silos that get in the way from allowing that to come together cohesively. Part of it is budget. Right, where organizations don't have sufficient budget to really put the platforms in place to allow it to reach across these different groups. And then part of it is our clients sometimes are afraid to take that step forward because the landscape continues to change. It's so dynamic right now that they're afraid to take that first step forward. So back to what you said earlier, I think it's important that clients sometimes should invest a little bit more money up front in a platform that will allow them to iterate and be much more agile in capabilities that they roll out and respond to market competition, respond to new entries in the market.
Okay, let's talk also a little bit about information. I mean, obviously people now, everyone, young people, old people, have real-time access to so much information that it's empowered them to be much more independent, and so their journey is less of a journey that we can predict and we can really see, and more just kind of all over the place. So, I mean, thinking about that, how can brands really make sure they're engaging people, they're engaging audiences in a relevant way through that random journey?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. We describe it as that linear experience is gone.
Yeah.
Right? And the A to Z is just not there. So you need to figure out, I think the first thing is you need to figure out what those potential paths are. If you can identify what those paths are, both entering an experience as well as potential drop-offs and exits, you're onto something. And then it's about, again, looking at the organization and figuring out how to bring those things together. But if you don't think about the model differently than it has been in the past, then you're going to lose opportunities to engage consumers along that journey.
Well, I mean, all the different things you're talking about, while they sound amazing, they are also, challenging, I'm sure, and there's a lot of technology involved. So first, let's talk about some of the challenging. I mean, these ideas are great in theory, but what are the challenges that you're really facing, or that the industry as a whole is facing, in order to really kind of make that so cohesive and so seamless?
Yeah, again, I can't stress enough the organizational structures and some of that. And then, the industry is, again, things are changing so fast that they're really not sure what to do. But I think fundamentally they understand the concept of connecting the dots. So my advice would be really to focus on those individual narratives and make those tight and succinct, but work across the different teams to make sure that those things are carrying through. So that would be some advice. And from a technology standpoint, there's a lot of legacy systems that firms are dealing with that's storing data. So part of the problem is the data that exists, and it's so massive and unruly. So really trying to identify pieces of data that are meaningful and making the connections between that data, which is really information. And that information allows you to understand whether or not you should invest more or information that says, let's pull the plug on that, that's not working. So those systems really need to be tied together. You need to look at optimization. You need to be much more agile in your approach to getting things out. Test, learn is something that is really, really important, and a lot of organizations struggle with.
I think you brought up that's a really good point, is, in theory it's all great, but then, putting it in practice. So I also want to talk a little bit about some of the tech trends. We were talking about tech, so some of the tech trends you've seen in 2015 and what you think is going to, or the trajectory of those for 2016 as well.
Sure. So the one I'm fairly passionate about is the Internet of Things. So home automation is a good example of devices that are coming out every day to aid in understanding your home, maybe from afar. And so I've done a lot of work in that space, tinkering, and what I've been really starting to really focus on is the connections between all these devices. So this device is now connecting to this device and talking to it, and this device reacts to things that happen with this device. So that's really exciting. But then what happens from there is these firms are not necessarily doing a great job at aggregating all that together into unified experiences. So I think there's an opportunity for those things to talk more together. Then I feel like there's an opportunity beyond that for marketers to start to leverage that data. I don't really know exactly what that data is going to be used for, but we're collecting data now.
Isn't that personal home data?
Exactly. They're collecting personal home data that, I tell you, there's advantages of these devices to a point where I think people are beginning to say, it's okay that I give up that data. And if I can see a benefit from giving up that data, I'm okay with it. So where that goes, I'm not sure, but I do think the data that's being collected will be repurposed and will drive more targeted experiences in the future, very near future.
I think just a very small point on that. One person actually said to me, he's like, I think people would feel more comfortable if they knew that it was machines taking in that data and not people. So machines, it's, they can know that much stuff about you, it's okay. Sure. It only becomes a problem if it's people. So ultimately it is all automated, and it's going to be machines collecting that data. Right. So
and machine learning and stuff, and being able to decipher what that data means and be able to create meaningful experiences from that data is something that, the power of that technology exists today. So right now, I think these brands that are coming out with these devices are in a collection mode. If you go back to some of the early applications in the cell phone arena that were being released for free, well, why were they being released for free? Because you accepted the terms of an agreement that said, it's okay to track everywhere I go. You didn't read it, I didn't read it, but we're tracking that information. And then they're able to leverage that data or sell that data to hopefully create meaningful experiences for us. The other thing that I'm really excited about, we talked a little bit about today, is what's going on with Oculus Rift. And while it's just hitting the market, we believe there'll be fun game experiences, but we do think what we're doing in Australia with our Chevy client is we've created this cinematic experience, this 4D experience, to transport drivers in a large auto show to New Zealand. And as that truck went through the hills, they could feel that experience. And so to me, they're now taking it to dealerships where they want to go in and think about identifying personas, like you're a different driver than I am. So through that sales process, they understand a little bit about you. And when they strap on that device, your experience is going to be different than mine. So I'm excited about the promise there. And I think there'll be a number of different devices that sort of hit the market that are similar. But the cost of that technology is going to come down, and the cost of creating those experiences are going to come down. And I really think a year or two out, it's going to be everywhere.
Wow, sometimes I get a little overwhelmed by some of these things, some of these new technologies. And on the one hand, it's a little frightening, but at the same time, it's so amazing. So, I hope it's always used for good and used to improve the user experience and ultimately sell great products to great people. So.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.